Welcome to the Immigration Report. We have a lot to get into today. The Trump administration just ordered ICE to not take it easy on protesters. A judge just ordered the release of Liam Ramos, a 5-year-old who was taken into custody by ICE. And one of the biggest immigration fraud has been uncovered being committed by the Chinese Communist Party of China, and a lot more that we're going to get into. Also, if you want daily immigration updates without bias, please consider subscribing. Let us get into it, starting with this update from Trump.
We do have to get to this update that just came out on social media from President Trump. This is via his Truth Social site. Putting this up on your screen now. This is on President Trump now speaking out on some of the anti-ICE protests happening across the country, saying this, quote, "I have instructed Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem that under no circumstances are we going to participate in various poorly run Democrat cities with regard to their protest and or riots until they ask for help. We will, however, guard and very powerfully so any and all federal buildings that are being attacked by these highly paid lunatics, agitators, and insurrectionists. Please be aware that I have instructed ICE and or Border Patrol to be very forceful in this protection of federal government property." This goes on to say, "There will be no spitting in the faces of our officers. There will be no punching or kicking the headlights of our cars. And there will be no rock or brick throwing at our vehicles or at our patriot warriors."
Basically, what the president is saying here is for Democrat-led cities, if there are riots, we'll not go in, will not help them, will not commit federal resources. But what we'll do, we'll protect federal buildings, we'll protect our federal agents. We'll use force if necessary. And here's the president on Air Force One expounding on that.
Mr. President, back to your post on ICE protests, what did you mean when you said people will suffer an equal or greater consequence?
If they do anything bad to our people, they will have to suffer. I'm sorry. If they start spitting in people's faces, punching our people, punching our soldiers, our patriots, they will get taken care of in at least an equal way. But they're not going to do that. Like, you see it, the way they treat our people. And I said, you're allowed, if somebody does that, you can do something back. You're not going to stand there and take it. If somebody spits in your face, that will not be a pleasant thing for the person that spits. We're not letting people spit in our soldiers' face as they stand at attention, and they're not allowed to do anything. If they throw bricks at a car, at one of our vehicles, that are very expensive vehicles, they're going to be met with very, very serious force.
So as you can see, the Trump administration is not playing around, because what we saw over the past couple of weeks, over the past couple of months, are protesters. They're essentially agitating federal agents. They're assaulting them. They're breaking vehicles. They're breaking things. And federal agents were somewhat restrained. Now we see that changing. And that comes on the back of that court ruling where an appeals court essentially ruled or overturned a ruling by a lower judge that said ICE could not use certain types of force. And here's that ruling.
Well, a ruling reversed a federal appeals court today, lifting restrictions that prevented federal agents from roughing up peaceful protesters. Esme Murphy is following that story for us from the newsroom. So, Esme, what does that mean?
Well, Aaron, this ruling puts on hold a decision that was widely cheered by protesters and Minnesota state officials. The ruling Friday night by Judge Kate Menendez, which had been effective immediately, said ICE could not arrest or use chemical irritants on peaceful protesters. It even allowed protesters to follow ICE vehicles at a safe distance. This ruling today puts that order on hold.
So as you can see, the Trump administration, they're going full steam ahead. And a lot of people thought because of the protesters, because of the protests, things would slow down, things would scale back. But we're seeing the complete opposite. And now they're giving agents, federal agents, the means to essentially defend themselves and defend federal properties. So what you're going to see a lot more aggression on both sides, because we know protesters, they aren't really trained in terms of de-escalation, right? And law enforcement, they will typically try to de-escalate, but what the Trump administration is saying, there's not going to be any type of de-escalation. If you spit at our officers, if you spit at our agents, if you try to essentially break our vehicles, that's what the Trump administration is saying. If you try to do any of those things, we're essentially going to respond in kind. We're not going to de-escalate. And this comes on the back of ICE. Essentially, they released a memo expanding the agent's warrantless arrest, basically saying agents don't really need a warrant to arrest certain illegal aliens. And here's an article that explains, it's from the Daily Caller. It explains that an internal memo sent to all Immigration and Customs Enforcement personnel Wednesday declared the agency has the power to arrest suspected illegal immigrants, including those likely to escape in the time required to obtain a warrant. The memo sent by the acting Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director, Todd Lyons, and first reported Friday by the New York Times, states the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 unequivocally authorizes an immigration officer to execute a warrantless arrest of an alien that meets one of the two criteria. And one of those criteria are essentially likely to escape, and the other one is entering the United States. So basically what ICE is saying here is that if they suspect an illegal alien to escape, they can arrest that individual without a warrant. Now, let us move on to our next story, which involves that 5-year-old Liam Ramos, who was arrested by ICE, taken into custody, him and his father. A judge just ordered their release in Texas. Let us take a look at this reporting by CNN.
All right, I also want to get to this breaking news. Just into CNN, a federal judge has ordered the release of 5-year-old Liam Conejos Ramos and his father from the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, Texas. That's according to a source with knowledge of the federal judge's ruling. Now, CNN has not independently obtained a copy of the judge's ruling. We're working on that now, but
so if you don't know who Liam Ramos is or the backstory, I have it right here. I'm just going to read it. Liam Ramos is a 5-year-old preschooler from an Ecuadorian family who sought asylum in the United States after entering legally in December of 2024 and following proper protocols for their pending claim. In January 2026, he gained international attention when ICE agents detained him along with his father, Adrian Arias, outside their home in Columbia Heights, Minnesota, as they returned from school, sparking widespread outrage over the use of the child in the arrest and their subsequent transfer to a family detention center in Dilley, Texas. A viral photo showed the boy in a blue bunny hat and Spider-Man backpack being led away, drawing criticism of the Trump administration immigration enforcement tactics. Witnesses and advocates claimed agents used him, that's the boy, as bait, while officials disputed this and alleged abandonment. A federal judge ordered their release by early February 2026 amid the controversy, and they were returned to Minneapolis. So basically what happened, this little boy, this 5-year-old Liam Ramos, and his father was detained by ICE, got sent to a family detention center, and a judge is now saying they need to be released back to Minneapolis while they await their due process. Now, let us move on to our next story, which takes us to China. And this is one of the biggest immigration scams that I've heard in a very long time. Take a look, where they're essentially farming babies in the U.S., send them back to China with U.S. citizens, and this is being perceived as a national security threat. Let us take a look at this reporting.
Well, a California woman has been sentenced to more than 3 years in prison for her role in birth tourism and the scheme for birth tourism. That's where she helped Chinese women travel to the United States to deliver their babies so that they would automatically become American citizens. Our next guest calls this, quote, a scam for American citizenship. Let's bring in Peter Schweitzer, president of the Government Accountability Institute and author of the book Invisible Coup. Peter, it's so great to have you on. Tell me more about how this scheme works.
Yeah, Rachel, what happened really beginning in 2011 and continuing to this day, the Chinese Communist Party has run articles in the People's Daily, other places, explaining to the Chinese elite that, hey, the American 14th Amendment says if your child is born in the United States, fly there, and your child can be a U.S. citizen. So this massive industry has evolved, primarily in California, also in China, where, people in China will pay $60,000 or so. They will fly to the United States, the pregnant mother. They will lie on their visa application. That's where these criminal charges come into place. They say we're not going to have a child. We're just here as tourists. They give birth here. They're given the birth certificate. They fly back to China, where the child will be raised in China. The problem is, Rachel, that when they turn 18, that child will be a U.S. citizen, even though they grow up in communist China. It's a massive, massive industry.
So what can the U.S. government do about this?
So as you can see, this is a whole business happening in China, and the Chinese government is involved with this, right? So basically what happened, they have these companies where they advertise to parents, right, or advertise to people, and they get pregnant, and then they pay a sum of money, and they send them to the U.S., mostly California, where they have those kids, they have the babies, then they take the baby back to China with U.S. citizenship. Because remember, the 14th Amendment gives birthright citizenship. So if you're born in the U.S., if you're born on U.S. soil, it doesn't matter where your parents have citizenship, you are a U.S. citizen automatically. So the baby, they're born on U.S. soil, so they send them back to China as U.S. citizen, then they raise them in China till they're 18, till they're however old, with communist ideals, communist values, then they send them back to the U.S. and they put them in schools, they put them in businesses, they put them in government. And now, because there's not going to be any question whenever you're running for office or whenever you're applying for anything and they see that you're a U.S. citizen, they're not really going to check your background to say, oh, yeah, you grew up in China. And what they do, they're working for the Chinese Communist Party, because the Chinese Communist Party, they're the ones that's in charge of this thing. And it's a massive industry. They're making a lot of money off of it. And there's been reports that this thing's been going on since 2010 and it's now 2025. So, and it's estimated that over 100,000 babies are born, through birth tourism from China. So now we're thinking about 1.5 million babies in China, or people in China, that are constantly being sent to the U.S. and being put in all of our institutions. And this is one of the reasons why the 14th Amendment is being debated right now about birthright citizenship. Now, let us move on to our next story. This takes us to Texas in regards to H-1B visas and the fraud that's being committed by this program. So if you don't know what the H-1B visa program is, it's basically a program for the U.S. to import workers, highly skilled workers, that they do not have. For instance, if we lack people in software, if we lack people in engineering, then that allows the United States to bring people from India, from China, and these are mainly the places where they're coming from. But the thing with this program, a lot of people, a lot of companies abuse this program because the U.S. may have the talent, may have the skilled workers, but at the same time, it's cheaper to take someone from China or to take someone from India and hire them and let them work for those companies. Now, Texas essentially is cracking down on this. We heard Donald Trump, the president of the United States, he discussed this briefly on the campaign trail, but we've seen a little bit of flip-flopping going back and forth. But now Texas is essentially cracking down on this. Let's take a look.
On Monday, Governor Greg Abbott made an appearance on the Mark Davis radio show, where he called the H-1B visa program an extraordinary controversy. He said there were recent reports showcasing fraudulent use of the program in the private sector, and now he's turning his attention to the public sector.
What I'm looking at is the extent to which Texas taxpayer dollars are being used to pay for any of these people.
Republicans at the national level have filed legislation to end the program, saying it's taking away jobs from American workers. On Monday, Abbott appeared to hint at similar concerns.
We want to make sure that our communities are not being, having people come in and take jobs that Texans can easily fill.
Abbott directed state agencies to file a detailed report with the Texas Workforce Commission about its
So this fraud is being reported that it's not just happening in Texas, it's happening all over the country. But Texas is one of the only states that are essentially cracking down on the H-1B visa system currently. I know Florida, they cracked down on it, and other states are doing certain things. And now it's making its way to Congress. And this is Representative Chip Roy, I believe he's out of Texas. Here's him on the H-1B visa program.
Yeah. It is very clearly false that H-1Bs are bringing in, the high-skilled workers that we need. That's just not true, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is all of the stuff they're selling us with it is not true. It's not what's actually happening. And so to your point, I support the PAUSE Act because I think it's across all issues. And I'm trying to make everybody understand we have, frankly, too many foreign-born people here for us to maintain our sovereignty, our identity as Americans. We need to pause. But I agree with you, and I'm introducing legislation probably next week that is going to be a massive overhaul of H-1Bs that would completely change the way we do it.
So as you can see, that is Representative Chip Roy. He's from out of Texas, from the 21st Congressional District. He's one of the most outspoken person in Congress. And what they're working on a Pause Act, which essentially pause all immigration to the U.S. It doesn't matter if it's H-1B, H-2B. What they're trying to do, they're essentially trying to get the American workers back to work. Now, that brings us to the end of today's immigration report. Please let me know in the comment section what you think in regards to this massive Chinese scam regarding the 14th Amendment. Please let me know what you think about the H-1B visa program and that judge ordering that 5-year-old to be released. Also, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you.